Oh, yeah, still hoping to get a set of computers.
You don't have any yet?
Oh, I have 20,
Oh, you have
but
20.
it's not enough to like do an actual class activity here.
20 is not enough.
I think I have 22, but it's not enough, all my classes are more than that.
I haven't heard, I know that they were ordering the under 35 or something, and so I haven't heard as to where they're
I
at in
just
the
know that
process.
they think I have a book on it. I haven't been able to use them other than to yours.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that.
But not for other things.
I kind of use them and I certainly it all.
Yeah. No, I have some classes where I'm short as many as 10 computers. It makes it hard. I just hope that enough of the students have their own.
Yeah. And then, there's always a few little ones too.
Yeah.
So then it may be that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I feel a little lost up here without Jeff to tell me I'm wrong in everything that I say. Happens in this room to me. I say something and Jeff says, Brigham, did you get the paper on the way in? It's on the table out there. Lisa, did you test? It's on the table there. It should have a padlock. No? Talk to IT. It's one of the things I'm going to say. Liz, should I go ahead and get started? I just did about 7 minutes ago. Just before you walked in the building, 6 through 12, I think. All right. Okay, well, we got enough people. I think we can go ahead and start. So we'll go ahead and get going. And I just wanted to start by just showing you this beautiful thing. Many of you know I'm a woodworker. And this is the tool cabinet that I wish I had made. I didn't make it, but it's also how I wish my tools were arranged. And in fact, they're not. I do know where all of my tools are, as long as no one else has come in and touched them. But it is the kind of thing that we're kind of thinking about, and this kind of the theme on this is we want to make sure that in thinking about the computer carts and kind of the best practices that we want to implement with regard to these computer carts is to kind of think about this. Everything has a place, everything's in its place, everything's where it needs to be, everything's been thought out in advance and prepared, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so I'm going to begin with just this little slide here, and it's got a whole bunch of numbers on it, and I've got a whole bunch of pictures after this, so don't get too focused on this. And all of this stuff is written down. There's basically 4 things that I want to think about, and the first thing is, what should you do before the students ever get the cart or the computer? And these are the 6 things, and Brigham quipped as he was looking at that list that on number 2 he's already failed. And that is an issue, is to do this. So we're going to kind of walk through this, and some of you may not have all these things, and if you don't, then it's you want to think about trying to get them for your cart. So the first thing that we need to really make sure is that our cart is labeled and the computers are labeled. Now, IT gives them to you, and they have this beautiful label on the back, which you cannot see while it's in the cart. And so the first thing that I'm going to suggest is that you add to the labeling. And it's maybe a little difficult to see here. I tried to draw the arrows. But on my cart, what I've done is I've taken a labeler, and I put numbers on the side and on the cart itself. Now, there's a lot of benefits and advantages to this. Number one is I can look at the cart and I can see if everything is in its place. The way that the IT department has labeled them, you can't do that. In fact, you don't even know if the right computers are in there, and you don't know if they're in the right place. This way helps me to do that. I think that this is something that's really important to augment the labeling on the computer carts. It will simplify a lot of the rest of the things that you can see. The other thing is we really do need to keep the cart locked when it's not in use. What we have discovered happens, and I don't think it has anything to do with theft or dishonesty, but what happens is students are here because they are waiting for a ride, or they're waiting for a practice, or they're doing something, and they say, oh, I've got this homework to do, and wanting to be diligent, they go around, they find a room that's unlocked, they go in, and they get a computer cart, and they take it out somewhere, and they sit down, and they begin to work on the computer, and then a friend comes by, and they stand up, and they walk off somewhere, and the computer stays where it is. And somebody else picks up the computer and puts it somewhere else, and they just get lost. And as a result of that, the teacher comes in the next morning or comes back from wherever they were, and now they're down a computer. And so IT brought around some combination locks and put them on all of the carts. Now, Brigham says his cart doesn't have one. So if your cart doesn't have one, contact Liz or IT or both and ask for one. These locks are not high security locks. I think anybody with more than 5 minutes worth of time could probably break the lock. There's only 999 combinations, 9,999 possible combinations. And so somebody that has a little bit of extra time to kill could easily get in this. But and shaking it and you probably don't even have to shake it very hard. It really is more of a symbolic thing, like, fences make for honest neighbors. And locks mean that the carts or the computers are on the cart when and where they need to be. So please just make sure that. The other thing, and I know that this is a hassle, but don't leave your cart unlocked. I have before gone just to the bathroom and come back, and there's somebody sitting outside my room with a laptop, and I noticed the red thing on it that says truth. And I've stopped and said, where'd you get the computer? And say, oh, you weren't in there, so I just grabbed it out of your cart. And, they're not being malicious. They're just trying to do what they need to do. But we need to make sure that those computers stay within those carts. And then the last thing, don't give the combination to a student. As as tempting as it is, you're trying to do stuff and you just need the cart opened and you just say to the computer, look, it's 1776. That means they have and everybody else has access to the cart for all time and eternity, which makes the carts, the lock somewhat unnecessary or illusory. Yeah. Yeah. And so these are not great locks, but they perform the function they need to. I take the lock off of the cart and put it on my desk because otherwise anyone can just look at the lock and see what the number is too. So, and I don't know if that's something that we want to address, Liz, as something that's a little bit better, but I do think these fill the function. So I know it's not convenient, but it is important. Okay? All right. Okay, second step, or the second main thing to do is make sure that you have assigned the students to a computer. Okay, now, again, this is something that can take some time, take some thought. So one of the things that I have is I have some large classes. And I have to sometimes think about, well, if I'm doing something in this class and they've used them for an hour, are the batteries going to be any good for the next class? And so one of the things to consider is, do you need to rotate? So you can see one of the things that I've done here is that I used some of the numbers for one class and some of the other computer numbers for the other class so that they can have more time to charge, so that you're not always using computer one for every class. Now, sometimes that's not possible. You can see on the third class up there, I actually have 33 students in that class. And so one of the students, she always has a computer. And consequently, I don't need to assign her a computer. Some students, though, have a computer sometimes and not other times. And for those students, you probably do want to assign a computer number to them. Now, this is something that you need to do and set the expectation, but then you need to make sure you have some form of accountability. So what I have is I have all of the assignments for computers posted in my room near the cart, because students will always say, oh, what number am I? And I say, well, you look on the chart. I shouldn't have to go look it up every time. You go look on the chart and remember your number. Or somebody will say, well, my computer's not there. And then I'll say, okay, so who has this number? And inevitably somebody says, oh, I thought that was my number. And I say, well, go back and look at the chart, see which one you have. And so, again, one of the things is to make the assignment, but then have some kind of accountability. And we'll talk about another kind of accountability on the back end on how you make sure that students are using their computer and that they are accountable for their computer. Yeah, it does. And if you have enough computers to do that, that's great. Some of my classes, if people didn't have their computers, we wouldn't have enough. Now, here's a little known secret. The chargers in the cart can easily be taken out of the cart. And there's actually a quick way to do that. So if you have students, for whatever reason, that their computer is dead, and I also have a box that I keep full of chargers. My wife accuses me of never throwing away an electronic charger of any kind. And I have about 7 computer chargers, and for that exact reason. Because when a computer's dead, it's just a paperweight. And so you can just plug it into a wall. Okay? But you want to be thinking about this. how are you going to make sure that the students are doing the things that they're supposed to be doing? Okay. Stop. Go, keep going. Okay. Now, the school has ordered, I think, 30 to 35 additional laptops. Now, they are laptops. They're for the carts. And when they arrive, we're all kind of experiencing the supply chain issues, and buying computers is something that's difficult right now. For study hall students, you should also assign a computer. And there are some other reasons to assign them to a particular computer, and I'll talk about those in just a few minutes. It's not just the accountability aspect, it's also the functionality of the computers. And I'll talk about that as we get a little bit further in the presentation. But it's really important that students are assigned to particular computers. Okay? All right. Now, another thing that you want to do, and part of that is what this training is for eventually, but another part of it is going to be placed upon you and a burden upon you. You need to determine some basic computer troubleshooting skills. There are a lot of things with these laptops that a teacher with just a little bit of knowledge can solve for the student. So, for example, some of my computers, for whatever reason, were having a hard time booting up, and I'll explain why that was in a few slides later. But so a student did what they were supposed to as part of my procedures. They brought it to me and they said, it's been doing this for 3 minutes. And so I did a cold boot on the computer, and it solved the problem. I don't necessarily need to call Ben or Joe and have them come down to address that, because I know how to do it. Sometimes it'll give you a message that there is a domain, that it can't find the domain. And you should be able to know how to do that. And you should also, as one of the other slides we'll talk about, you need to test or know how to use the applications that you're using too. And there are some things that are pretty basic. So I was using some computers on Tuesday, and one of the students, I told them they needed to go to Veracross, and this student hadn't used Veracross much. And so we went to American-heritage.org, and it was not our website. And I looked at it and said, oh, you just typed it in wrong. So I pulled it up and I fixed it, and I was right back in the exact same place. And then I thought, uh-oh, what's happened here? And I looked carefully and I said, no, that is our website, but it's redirected us to this new place, and we've changed our website. Nobody ever told us that we were changing our website. And so, again, there's some basic troubleshooting things. And sometimes what the teacher needs is just a minute to say to the students, stop, be quiet, let me think for just a minute. Now, I'm using the polite version here. Jay and I were talking a little bit earlier where, the more direct one is, you are under the misimpression that this is a conversation. Just stand there for a minute and let me kind of collect things. But I looked at it and I realized, oh, there are 3 campuses. I clicked on the American Fort campus, and there was the regular website, and then they could go to Veracross. Okay? So there are usually ways. But we don't want to be the top guy. We don't want to be the guy that just can't do anything and says help all the time. We want to instead be able to do some basic things, and that's kind of the bottom. Alternatively, always reboot your computer, okay? And this is not how you reboot. Even though we've all had this kind of feelings at times, this is not how we reboot. All right. If you've done all that, you're ready to begin. And what you need to do is come up with some startup procedures. And like any classroom procedures, and Brigham and Heidi have been teaching us about this, you need to teach those procedures and then reinforce those procedures consistently. And so for me, these are my procedures. I think they're pretty good. They've worked well for me with some very large classes and limited computers. And this is what I do. If we're going to use the computer, I explain the task to the student. And it may mean that I demonstrate to them using the screen and my computer. And I walk them through the whole thing. Now, at this point in time, they don't have the computers. Because my experience is that if I don't have the computer cart locked, as soon as I mention the word computer, regardless of anything else, I've got students going back to get the computers. They're not listening to me at all. They're getting computers, they're trying to log on, they're doing all these things, and I then have to say the same thing 7 or 8 different times. So I explain the task and demonstrate, then I unlock the cart. So that is another way of keeping control of the situation, is they don't even have access to the tool until after they've received the instructions. Now, then they line up and they get their computer and they boot the computer up. While they're booting the computer up, I am monitoring the boot up. Most of the time now, I think IT has solved all of my boot up problems most of the time. And so my computers boot up now within about a minute, minute and a half, 95% of the time. But once in a while, I see that computers are having troubles. Well, I'm monitoring this because there are students that are quite happy to sit there for a very long time and then come to me 40 minutes into the class and say, oh, it's still doing this. Okay? They're just happy to sit there. So I monitor it. I go around and I make sure that everybody has gotten to where they need to go. And if not, I try to do some of that troubleshooting. If there's a problem during the boot up, I need to record if necessary, report any issues. So yesterday, I discovered a novel issue. There was an error message that was popping up that I'd never seen before, and it wouldn't go away. And so I sent it into support, and Ben got back with me immediately and said, take a picture of it. And so I did and sent it in, and things get resolved that way. Jenny. So for me, boot up is the whole process of turning it on, logging in, getting to the desktop, launching whatever application they need to launch, and to be where they can begin to begin work. Okay? So you just want to monitor that, because anywhere along the way it can slow down and you get that, spinning cycle of death. One of the things that you really want to do as part of your procedures is make sure that you teach your students, if they see something unusual or something is not happening the way that it's supposed to be, that they say something. Again, they're sitting there with this red flashing light looking at them, and they'll just, oh. And so you have to affirmatively tell them, if you see something, say something. And, you've got some that they're just not interested in doing it. Some, they're just those very quiet kids. They don't want to cause a problem, but they'll just sit there in front of the computer. You don't know, are they working or are they not working? And so you have to teach them to speak up if something unusual is happening when they're logging in, or if that there is something that's wrong. And what I teach my students to do is to pick their computer up, come up to my desk, and wait. And that's the important part. They're not to interrupt me, but they're to wait. Because usually I'm helping somebody else, and they just need to wait a second, be patient, and I will get to them. The other thing to look out for is when students are on a computer. Our students are very, very impatient with computers. They don't remember or know anything about dial-up. And they think that these computers are incredibly slow. And, I remember when it took 7 minutes just to get the ka-ching, ka-ching, the sound that you've connected. So it's a little bit different. All right. So if you see something, say something. That's a really important thing. Okay. Now, another important procedure is the shutdown procedure. And this is where I think, and IT has indicated that we're getting some of our problems with our computer usage. A student gets on, logs into a computer, and at the end, when they're done, they close the computer and they put it away. They're still logged into that computer. That computer is still running their account in the background. The next time a student opens it up, it logs in, and another student, and now you've got 2 accounts that are open, and then 3, and then 4, and then 8, and eventually it eats up all of the computer's memory and available disk space. We used to have a program that solved this. It was called Deep Freeze. And what it did is, as you opened up the computer, it went in and erased everything from the last session and allowed for a clean start. But the Deep Freeze was causing more problems than it was solving. And so we have removed Deep Freeze from the computers. As a result of that, it is possible to have 100 different accounts on a single computer and all of them to be open. And your computer will go very, very slowly if that is the case. So you really need to have these shutdown procedures. And this is what I do for my students. They are required to save all of their working files and to actually know where they have saved them. It is amazing to me how many students don't really understand the concept of saving files into a particular folder or file structure. Tess? Yes, there is. And I will show that in another one on when we are talking about the Windows operating system and how to see how many accounts are logged into a particular thing, but not today. The best thing is to just cold boot the computer if that seems to be the problem. And that's what the problem was with me on Tuesday is some of the students in the senior thesis class had apparently logged into multiple computers, and so they were being really slow. And so I did a cold boot on them. That went away with the going away of Deep Freeze. Now, and what Alex said for those on video is it used to be that if they saved it on the desktop, it disappeared forever. That's no longer the case. However, please teach your students not to do that. And I'm the worst offender of that because I save everything to my desktop. But I also back it up on a regular basis myself on my laptop, and nobody else is using the laptop but me. But, yeah, teach your students how to save files and where to save them. It takes a few minutes, but they really need to learn that skill. Jenny? They should not. Or the OneDrive. Yeah. Unfortunately, the student drive is no longer available. Is that right? There's no H drive. No, there is still. Is it back? It's back. Cool. Okay, so they will be able to save to their student account, but those files are only available if they're on campus. They really should be saving it to OneDrive because then it's available to them everywhere that they have an internet access. Not today. We will be covering that another time. Okay? All right. Second thing they need to do is they need to close all the applications. If you're always asking them to close all the applications, it's less likely that there's going to be multiple accounts with multiple applications open using resources. Jenny? Doesn't necessarily do that. So again, these are belt and suspender kind of options, and it doesn't take long. And honestly, they probably shouldn't have more than 2 applications open anyway. They should have an internet browser with whatever internet site they're going to open and Word or some other kind of thing. They shouldn't have 15 applications open. Okay? Close their applications, then I have them log out, and then I have them shut down. Now, that's a little bit redundant. If you shut it down, it will do all of these. But again, what I'm trying to do is teach them proper procedures. It's a bad thing to just shut down a computer without closing applications, saving files, and whatever. So I'm trying to say, look, you're working on a network. This is how you do it. You log out, and then you shut down the computer. Okay? Then they're required to go store the computer and plug it in. Brigham. Okay, so there is an issue with that. Let's say, for example, they click shut down and then they close the lid. It may not have shut down, and it might have just gone to sleep. So what I tell them to do is to shut down, and then they have to wait until the screen goes black. I think you do. If they really do wait for it to go black and close the lid, that's fine. The logging out is only a 5-second process. And so this is part of my insistence on doing things the right way. These work for me. They may not work for you. If the computer actually shuts down, it has closed all the files, all the applications, and it has logged them out. Yes. Camille? And it's a security issue. Yeah. So logging out is a security issue, and one of the things that we have learned through our survey that we did in December is that we all scored quite lowly on the security issue, including myself, by the way. Okay? Now, yes? Yeah, and it's not. It's not. They're still logged in, and they're still logged into that computer, and all their applications are still running in the background. That's why the shutting down is so important in addition to logging out. So I really do think that those two things are important to do. Yes. You actually would be surprised. One of the things that I've learned, Jenny said that her students know more about computers than she does. You know, I've heard for a long time that the generation that's coming up are what they call digital natives, but I actually refer to them as digital tourists. They actually don't know what they're doing. They know how to explore, but they don't know anything else. And sometimes older people actually are able to better understand what's happening. Yes, we're going to teach more of these things. This is the first step on a long journey. The 1,000 li. Is that the right? I'm not even sure if that's how you say it. Okay, after everyone has put their computer away, and hopefully before anyone has left the classroom, I inspect the cart. Okay? Now this is where the labeling is important. I can go over and I look at the cart and I can see everything's where it's supposed to be. Everything lines up and all the cords are plugged in. And what I'm looking for is, are there computers that have been misfiled? Are they in the wrong slot? Because the next student that comes in may not check to see that they've got the right number. Okay? And are they plugged in? It's surprising to me how few students will plug in a computer unless you require them to plug them in. They just put them away. And, and 2 class periods down, the computer's dead, which is a real problem. All right, now, how do you get students to be accountable for this? And this is how I do it. I have a stack of these that is sitting in a basket on top of my computer cart. And when I inspect, I just grab this and I look at it. And if there are computers that aren't plugged in, that are misfiled, or that haven't been shut down correctly, and that last one is a little harder to tell, so we'll hold on to that one for a minute. I indicate the number, and there are points associated with every project where they use computers, and they lose those points if they don't properly deal with the stewardship issue. Okay? That gives them the incentive to do it correctly. Otherwise, you guys have all seen it. The bell rings, people go, and there's computers laying around the classroom. There's computers stacked on top of the cart. They're stuck into the cart any old way, and they're just not ready for the next class to come in. Alex? The only way to do that is to have somebody open up the computer and try to go and wait for it to do the boot up and look at the welcome screen. I don't do that every single class, but I do have one of my aides, not one of my TAs, one of the students. I periodically will have them take all the computers out, open them up, and log in, and then do a hard boot on them so that they shut down completely. So I had one of my TAs do that yesterday. That was his assignment for the day, was just to do that. And it's something that's useful for them. It's a tedious job, so it's perfect for a student. And it's helpful because I now know that all 32 of my computers have been booted up and then shut down. Does that make sense? Okay. A cold boot is when you hold down the power button for 7 seconds. And so you're basically disrupting it and you're pulling the power out. Sometimes that doesn't work. And you all, or most of you, used to know the Control-Alt-Delete trick to pull up the task manager. That has been disabled on all the student laptops. So the only way to shut them down when they have frozen is to do a cold boot, where you hold down the button until it powers off. That just means that it's been shut off and I'm booting it up from the beginning. Sorry, these probably aren't very precise terms. Yeah, we did. And yeah. Now, I have a little space that I can write something on if there's a problem with the computer, and I can do that. So I use this also when they're booting up. A student says, oh, here's a computer and it's got this problem. I can make a note of it. And that way I just have a record. It's really quick and easy. And I have a list of the assignments, and so I can make whoever's assigned to that computer responsible for it. Now, do I sometimes get students that say, that wasn't me? Yes. However, that's a great lesson in accountability and stewardship and responsibility. Yeah. Yes, I will. Oh, yeah, it's because my card originally only had 30 slots. I'd already numbered them. It had 32 slots, but I only had 30 computers. And so I skipped the 2 end slots because they're more difficult to get the computers in and out of. And then when I got 2 additional computers, I didn't want to go renumber everything, so I was lazy. And so I put 32 up on the top row and 31 on the bottom row. And this, yeah, that's the top section is the top row, and the bottom section is the bottom row. Yes, I do. Yeah. Just come and pick my labeler up. I think everybody on the ground floor has used my labeler for their computers over in the high school building. Yeah. And I've done that with, last year I didn't have a labeler. Last year I used a Sharpie marker instead. But yes, you can just come borrow my labeler. It sits in a drawer most 99.9% of the time, doing nothing. It's also for nuclear reactors, if you're a fan of MacGyver. All right, this is a great quote that I think is useful for the students to recognize. It's from Bear Gillis, and it basically says, once a job it has begun, do not stop until it's done. Whether it is big or small, do it well or not at all. They're not done until the computer is put away correctly. It doesn't matter what else is going on. It doesn't matter if the bell has rung. They're not done. Okay? And this is something that's important, is to just, and it's this stewardship issue, just remind them, this is what they need to do. And they sometimes will complain about the computers. Oh, these computers are awful. Well, they're awful because people don't take care of them. They don't use they don't treat them as a steward. They treat them as a renter, to go back to something else, okay? All right. Last thing, periodic maintenance. You know, I love this particular little meme. I went to the dentist on Wednesday, and fortunately they don't say that to me. But you know, I've seen this a lot. He's got it sitting on a sign there on the side, and I think it's hilarious because it's like, dude, you were there. That was a year ago. You know, a little periodic maintenance goes a long way. And so once in a while, when you've got an in-service or you've got a prep period or something, I'm not saying you do this every time and every day, but confirm that all your computers are working. I did it yesterday with a TA. I just had him boot them up, log in, shut them down. And he was doing multiple computers at once. So he didn't need to do them one at a time. He had 5 or 6 going, and then he would, and so it's something that works. Confirm that your labels are correct and affixed. So I looked at mine today, and 3 of the labels had fallen off, and 4 were about to fall off. So I just quickly remade 7 labels and took off the ones and put new ones on it so they're nice and clean. Report any issues to IT. You know, as you're doing the boot up and boot down, if anything's wrong, send it up to IT. They'll come and fix it. And it's better that they fix it on a day like today when you don't have 30 students trying to use a computer than when you're trying to get them to do something that's important and you've got 7 students going, it's not working, I can't get it to work. And then, of course, test and verify any application use. A lot of times we see something and we go, oh, that would be really cool, I'm just going to do this. And you get there the next day and you say, okay, everybody go here. And that URL has been blocked by IT and you can't get to it. Now your lesson plan is out the door. So you want to verify wherever you can. I use my son to verify things a lot of times when we first get to school. He's got 40 minutes before classes start, and I often tell him, log in, go to here, do this, and see if it works. And he just does that for me. So it's nice to have that kind of a little TA. All right, now, if we will follow these procedures and implement procedures that work for you and for your classroom, a lot of the computer strife and struggles that we deal with will disappear. In the next technology training, we're going to start getting into some of the programs and some of the things that we need to do on a regular basis. But we thought we would start with this because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is, as Chase would put it, the customer experience. If students feel that they can't use computers because the computers don't work, that's a problem for our school. It's not just a problem for our classroom. Because they go home and they say to their parents, oh, yeah, I was supposed to do this at school, but the computer wouldn't work, and it's an issue. So we want to make sure that we're doing our part. And if we're doing our part and communicating well with IT, IT will do their part, and everybody will have a great experience. Okay? All right. Any questions? That's a great question. Liz. So we're going to be accountable for our carts as well. Now, Alpine School District next year is doing every student will have a computer provided by the district. It's been a 3-year rolling program, and next year the last of the schools will have that. So, any other questions? All right. Thank you all. I'll send both the list of procedures as well as my checklist out to everybody. Thank you all. Have a good day, and we will see you.